Hello, everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women. And this organization is a community building organization. And we built this organization, me and my co-founder, Leila Rao, to amplify voices of women in Lean and Agile spaces and bringing the women thoughts and journeys and stories across the globe, believing that we're all a community, one community, and there is so much to learn from each other, and we can truly lean into each other so that we can learn more and share more and leverage each other's journeys, so all of us don't have to work as hard as each of us. So it is a community that we would like to see together and learn from each other, so that it is just so much more powerful than individuals working towards their goals. So as part of this, we have started LIA100, which is a project with interviews and journeys of 100 women across the world. And we asked for nominations from the communities, and the community was graceful enough to nominate the women. And we have curated the list, and here we are with all those phenomenal women. If you want to see more people, more women interviews, please come to YouTube, and you just have to search on LIA100, and you will get stories and journeys of these phenomenal women. So here we are. I'm bringing a really amazing story to you today, which I was really moved. And, I didn't want to miss anything in her introduction. So I have something noted, on the side here. So I'm literally going to, read out, because I don't want to miss anything in her background. My guest today is a speaker, a mentor. She's a workshop leader. And something very interesting, I thought, is she's a chief provocator at Inside Out Consulting. She works with progressive leaders and teams to strengthen their leadership skills, increase their capacity for decision-making, and instill a mindset that prepares them for exponential change and complex environments, which we all need very much in this world. She's the author of Decision-Making for Dummies, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And this is on Forbes Steve Denningâ's list of 8 noteworthy books, which is pretty awesome. And she's the co-author of From Hierarchy to High Performance, and has contributed chapters and articles to numerous publications. Her podcasts over the last 10 years have focused on management innovation, reconnecting decision-making to values, and insights about business adaptability and personal growth. She, from insight to action, specializes in perceiving the deep dynamics and underpinning the performances. She works with progressive leaders to raise the functionality of decision-making, leadership skills, and most importantly, the mindset to be fit for exponential and complex environments. She has presented in numerous forums. Some of them are Agile India, Scrum Alliance with Steve Denningâ, and Agile Games New England. And her topics covered, overarching among many, around working on the transformative edge, bridging from traditional to agile worldview. And she sees, being a speaker, author, facilitator, she sees Agile as one way for companies to gain a rapid response needed to work with unpredictable external conditions, which we call the VUCA world today. And she also draws on her experience in biology, neuroscience, and 25 years of experience working with complex organizational dynamics, plus intuitive insights. So also she contributed to the Intelligence of Cosmos. I think we mentioned on deep dynamics, and she's the host of podcasts for past 10 years. You can Google on her, search on her, you will get phenomenal information about her. She's none other than Dawna Jones. Dawna, it is my true pleasure, honor to invite you on LIA100 platform. And we spoke very briefly about your experiences and where you're coming from and what you really made out of those moments in your life. I can't wait for you to share it with your audience. Welcome.
Wow, thank you for such a generous introduction. My goodness. I
It's
hope I can live
yours.
up to
You made it. You made it
that.
possible.
Thank
So,
you. Thank
uh,
you.
so Dawna, everything that I just said has so much for all of us to know and learn from your experience and with your interactions with, so many in your career. I would like to start with that word that really caught my attention. Why did you call yourself a chief provocator?
Well, I've experimented over the years with a variety of different titles, and that one was given to me by a friend of mine. He said, "Look, no matter what you do, wherever you go, you're always provoking growth. You're always provoking, authenticity and alignment with your true self, with who you are." So he sort of gave me that name, and I thought, okay, I'll try that. That's kind of
And that is so interesting.
yeah.
It is so interesting because it's the first time I've seen it, and I knew that there was some significance to it. So that's fantastic. So let's go right into your experience, Jonah. Tell us a little bit about highlights of your career, if you can, particularly highlighting on adversity, because I know that that's where the story lies.
It's
So
always where the story
yeah,
lies.
yes. So please take it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm fortunate because I grew up the daughter of a wildlife photographer, and I grew up in the countryside. So when the world didn't make sense to me, which was frequently and often, I would hide in the bush and just sit there. And what I didn't realize then was I was taking in and just literally absorbing as a kid. And this has been demonstrated in research later that there's a higher level of cognitive development when you're in those environments, but you're also basically understanding what are the interdependencies of all things, and really the fact that we are, everything is interrelated. There's it's a seamless and very complex living system. And so everything I saw after that was of that, that's the lens I used. So in my role as a professional facilitator, I would be able to eventually, over time as you gain experience, but I would be able to see what was going on behind the scenes. So a team would present itself with a certain number of issues, but behind the scenes, you could see how the culture was reinforcing those issues, how the management style was, or the metrics, or whatever the container, the elements of the containing environment were having an impact. Uh, and I ended up doing an awful lot of high-end conflict stuff. And
Hmm.
that was just because at the deeper level, there's always something that is being overlooked. If you just tinker around on the surface, you're just going to be fixing things on the surface. But deeper dives give you more profound change and more of a jump.
Yeah,
So the adversity question now.
of course. That's what I was waiting to hear. Go ahead.
So in the process of working with companies for many couple decades, working with different contexts and so forth, it became pretty clear to me that we weren't keeping up. We weren't adapting how we do things fast enough in organizations and as individuals to keep up with the pace of ecological change that was going on, kind of like a screensaver in the background, but also social change that was happening. And so my mission was to go out and really help humanity adapt to the events that came up. Well, you put out a mission like that, and the world responds. And so basically, there was absolutely no response, like zero. And the business crashed completely in 2008. And I spent the next 9 years on the road, pretty much homeless. I had my car, which was great. But that was it. So, and the car was off the road from time to time too. But that was the period where I did the writing. Wrote Decision Making for Dummies in 2014. It's still relevant today because we really haven't evolved that much. But that's the choice where you look at yourself and you go, okay, well, I can do a deep dive into depression here, or I can expand how I see the world and work with it differently, work with what's showing up as a constructive teacher, as a way to evolve my adaptability, my mental, my emotional, my cognitive agility. I'm saying that clearly now, but of course that's not how it felt. It was quite messy. But that's really, I think, the opportunity we all have in front of us now as we look at global issues and organizational issues. like Agile, the implementation of Agile at least. So.
Yeah. So that is beyond inspiring, Dawna, I must say. When you were homeless, when you were just with your car, you wrote a book and you bounced back, and here you are, sharing your story. How many times do we get to hear a great story like this, which is inspiring to kind of hold on to your confidence and belief in the times of adversity. So tell us what really kept you going, during those 9 years, Jonah. What was that confidence like?
It's a drive, and it's a purpose, mission-driven drive. I mean, the pressure to conform in society is huge. Like the number of people that would say to me, "Well, why don't you just get a job?"
Yeah.
Doing something like be a greeter at Walmart or something like that, and you're thinking, "Oh, there's no way I'd suffocate," because freedom and autonomy is my highest value, and if I cannot, engage with the world at the level of being able to be free, then I don't function very well. So I did try, jobs. And after the first week, my face had broken out into a massive rash. So it was like physically there was this backlash, which is, an expression of your intuitive as well. So I mean, really what kept me going the entire way is hope. Hope that at some point we'd be able to make these shifts as a species, that I would be able to bring something, of value to that conversation. And of course, the longer you're on the road, despite the fact there's a certain amount of whining on my part about wanting a home and stability and a whole bunch of things, it really becomes the training ground for how, to work with conditions that are completely unpredictable, completely uncertain, very ambiguous, all the stuff that we see in the literature today and have been for, at least a decade. So, that's it, really. It's that simple. It's not a matter of being able to hold the mission on the side and say, hey, you stay over there while I do my financial security thing over here. It just would not work that way. It was fully integrated. And it was not something you could negotiate or adjust or argue with, although I certainly tried. But it's just not something you can argue with. You have to go with it, and I think that's where the value lies. That's where the growth lies.
Absolutely. So you bring up a great point, right, Dawna? Most of us have our goals, dreams, and missions that we want to accomplish someday, right? And that someday might be, far in the future. But then, we are grappling with day-to-day survival, or, fitting into the mold, or conforming to the society, or, an expectation from the society. As you said, it's about integration. It's about, being one unit. It's easier said than done. It's great to hear, but very hard to kind of, make it happen. What kept you hopeful? Hope is an abstract word, but how did you bring that awareness into yourself each time you had a temptation to go back and conform to the norm? How did you make that happen? Because that's a phenomenal feat by itself.
Well, thank you. I mean, again, I have a feeling that it's not something you just have to go with it. We're talking about embodiment and being true to oneself. And when young people now are looking at the debate, do I follow the social conditioning path, which is I get a job, or do I be true to myself? And interesting that we've got that dichotomy in front of us. Choose, be true to yourself, because if you do what previous generations have done, which is follow the line of linear expectations, you do this and you get a home, you get the material stuff and then retire. Honestly, it doesn't have the kind of meaning that's required to make sense of this world today. So the answer to your question is I followed meaning and purpose. This has deep and profound meaning to me. And the purpose is, I aimed for business, quite frankly, because business has the biggest impact, both positive and negative, on both social and ecological health. Mm-hmm. And so I aimed there, believing that if we are able to support a shift, a transformation in mindset at that level, call it consciousness if you will, but being able to see things in a much more wider way, and a more, you know, expansive way, depth as well as width, then we, and empathically as well, restore some respect for the complexities of being human, and for the dimensions that we bring to it. So that means emotional, social is as much a part of it as intellectual, and really looking at it as a take your whole self to work, whole being thing. So that's really the short answer. Is that, I think it's a long answer, I don't know, but it's really about being able to take all of you there to wherever you go, and not have to leave a part of yourself at the, you know, at the door of whatever you enter into. So meaning was strong, and the purpose is strong, and the purpose is a higher one. Obviously, it's what they would call in the XPRIZE area massive transformation purpose. That's, you know, that's it, and that's what held me true. And yes, there definitely was times when you're just going, will I be alive when we get there? This is just this is taking a lot, but you know, so you have those moments, and you know, I'd go to the bush where it makes sense, and then come back out and try again. Yeah.
Wow. No, I'm actually, you know, trying to visualize that strength and that resolve and the determination, which is huge. And I think there's so much to learn just from that story, Dawna. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, it could be the, you know, guiding principle, or, you know, guiding story for many of us. So thank you.
Oh.
So let's talk about your, you know, your books, your publications, and you know, your writing side of, you know, yourself, right? So when, and I ask this of many, you know, many women that I interview, that, you know, many of us want to express ourselves. It could be in the form of writing, speaking, or even sharing our stories with one or with a group of people. But then there is always that self-doubt and self-apprehension, or a barrier that we have put for ourselves, telling us we are not good enough, telling us we are, why we, you know, why should we tell that story? You know, who are we? When you first set out to write your first piece of work, whatever that is, and when you first set out to speak on a stage, what was the dialogue like with yourself, and how did you make that happen?
Okay, there's a number of questions in there, a number of layers to that question.
Yes.
What I'll do is I'll start with the expression part of it, because that's key. So biologically, what I came to understand was that the repression of expression creates depression or aggression.
Wow.
And
can you
so,
please repeat that?
I know it's a
That
tricky
is
one.
so beautiful. Please
But
repeat that.
repression of your expression creates depression or aggression. And the statistics on depression worldwide are ridiculous. As I said earlier, it's one of those things that cuts across all generations, which is tragic. So what I found happened for me is as I ran into walls, I did a lot of writing before Decision Making for Dummies came along. I just never published it. I mean, I wrote a book called Making Sense of Life's Interruptions. That's an ebook, and I'm going to take it down and start playing with it again and rewriting it. So that was about 3 years later, I started writing, you know, Decision Making for Dummies. But the point is that I, you know, when I hit a wall, I wrote, and consequently, I wrote a lot. Many walls, and I just didn't think, you know, you hear not only your self-critic, but you hear criticism. I got a lot of criticism on my writing, you know, this isn't clear, nobody understands you, and I don't understand you, and it went on and on and on, and you just persevere, because sooner or later you're going to learn to write. And so Decision Making for Dummies was one of those places where we took my associative mind that works like a, you know, ADHD mind map pretty much, and you tried to stuff it into a linear sequential format, which was really challenging. But that's how, I mean, as I say, I just came back from Stockholm speaking at Agile People Sweden, and I stayed in a little cabin on a channel on an island there, and spent 3 months writing how not to write a Decision Making for Dummies book. So it's one of those things
Wow.
yeah, this is just hilarious. You sort of get into it and you go, okay, that's so what it does is in other words, express yourself. That's the core thing out of it. You have to be able to express yourself, creativity. And that means simply just doing it, because you'll have your own committee going on about, you know, I can't, you know, I'm not good enough. I've got a book
Yeah.
right now that I'm working on that scares the daylights out of me, because it's my first effort at fiction. And I just sort of look at it and go, really? You know, I'm not sure. But you have to get yourself out of the
Yeah.
way. You know, you have to let your ego, if why me is an ego-based question, you have to just get rid of that and just say, look, let me just trust that something that I say will be of value in the world. Something will help somebody somewhere and support them in their journey, and so, or their path. And so I'm just going to do it. And that's really what you have to kind of hold front and center. And, you know, there's setbacks all the time, but, you know, you experience those setbacks, but as long as you keep your eye on the goal, which is whatever that is, raising awareness in my case, and bringing forward action and so forth, then you'll get through that. You'll get through it in spades. And that's really, you know, organizations are faced with the same question today, is they're using some of these challenges to go inward, not outward. And so it's just exactly the same dynamic personally as it is organizationally at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I think what you just said about depression and aggression, you know, and I think most of us, you know, kind of struggle with expression, right? And all of us have something to offer of value and various degrees of value, but then we are so hesitant to express it. And what you just said is just so beautiful, right? You know, get out of your own way and let that flow begin. So
Yeah, I mean, even if it's just grabbing a camera and going out and taking pictures, I mean, it's digital, you can erase them if you're not happy with them, but you just something that honors your creative side, because that's what gets you through this work. Not anything you can cognitively come up with. And rationalizations are, you know, addicts are great at rationalizing. So it's the leap into the creative side of it that really allows you to balance, keep balanced with what's going on in the world today, and with yourself as well.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't have to be writing. I mean, mine just happened to be writing, but it can be, you know, it can be anything. That's on the creative side.
Absolutely. So, you know, let's talk about the decision making, Dawna, because, you know, you wrote that book when you were on the road. Why did you choose decision making? Why is the topic so close to you?
Well, the joke is that I pitched when I went down to Authors 101 University in LA in 2013. I pitched Take Your Whole Self to Work. And they said, well, you haven't written. And I also took, you know, Making Sense of Life's Interruptions, which was one that they liked. But they said, you know, you haven't written something before. The agency basically said, you haven't written anything before. And Wiley's wants to do a Decision Making for Dummies book. Would you like to write it? And I went, I was kind of whining a bit, because I'd facilitated so much in the way of decision making, and I just, you know, was leaving that world behind me. I thought, maybe I need to bring that forward, because, you know, that's a strong base of experience and so forth. So yeah, that's how that began. And of course, you know, people look at it now, they say, well, you wrote that in 2014, isn't it outdated? And I thought, no, we really haven't evolved much since then. And we certainly have not evolved to handle complexity. I mean, all you have to do is take a look at the political decisions and a lot of any other business decisions. And they're really not using the conditions of complexity to make better decisions. There are a particular set of skills that Theo Dawson from lectica.org has measured, and I just finished presenting on that. But there's a complexity gap between the roles of managers as they move up the line, and the skills to work with complexity. So that's going to show up in decisions. You know, any decision you've seen that's completely illogical is going to be one of those decisions that did not have the skill, did not have the process or the skill set to sort of say, what questions do we need to ask to make sure this fits in this interconnected but interdependent in context as well. So we have a lot of work to do, I think, in short, on the decision making front.
We do. Okay. And that makes a lot of sense. And you've done several other publications and books, and I think all of those are available for people to, access, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of articles on the Huffington Post as well under great work cultures, not just by a whole bunch of us. And but the point is that we're still working on that, and this is probably the best place for people to shift their piece with what's happening in the world today, because these decisions aren't just organizational, they're personal.
Yes.
What do I do when I'm feeling confused or down, or getting a polarity in myself, or I think I'm right and they're wrong? What do I do? How do I adapt my way of seeing things so I can see more of the picture, not
Yeah.
less, and widen it out? I mean, those are the same kinds of things that have to be done in business for better decisions to be made. And it's in the research, so I'm not saying anything that hasn't been substantiated, but there's also, it's pretty intuitive as well.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you jump around a fair bit and don't restrict your intuition to this narrow little bandwidth.
Yeah, yeah. I think expansion is the key here. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, Jonah, you've spoken quite a bit. You've been a speaker, you've been a presenter, and you participated in these various forums, right? And speaking is also one of the most feared aspect of women, especially. I don't know why. There are men who are also kind of apprehensive of public speaking and sharing their stories and journeys, but I see more of that happening with women. And women that I talk to, that I mentor, that I work with, they say public speaking is one of their greatest fears. So again, going back to, how did you get over that first hump?
Oh, I love that. Thank you for, it's really funny because as a professional facilitator for eons, I would stand up in front of groups and I'd be scared, but I was there to facilitate their, something, so that for their, like sort of wider benefit, as it were. But then along the way, somebody asked me to come and speak, and I just got terrified because I thought, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's where the ego steps forward. What have I got to say anybody would want to hear? I mean, there's all these doubts that showed up. And then I thought, okay, this isn't going to work. So I need to adjust how I'm seeing this. And what I did was I pretended I was facilitating their, learning, which, I delivered leadership learning programs from the inside out for 11 years. So it was it wasn't about me, it was about the group. And as long as I took myself out of the equation and said, this isn't about me, this is about how I'm attempting to serve this particular community of people, it was much easier. And it doesn't mean you don't get scared going or nervous going up, although I'm finding even that's, like this last time, I was probably the calmest I've ever been. But that's just a matter of practice. You just keep getting up and doing it. But it's also a matter of centering and, being clear about how to center and keep your emotions in coherent with your feelings, getting everything in alignment. So that's again is a matter of practice. But going back to what you're asking, it was just, knowing that this isn't about the lens being on me, it's about what I can possibly do in this situation that would support understanding or provide some insight, which is, a little flip on perspective that helps make sense of everything.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that is something that we all must remember, to be centered, to be calm, and also understand that what I say might impact and influence and inspire somebody in some way. So not diminishing our own value. That's what I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, to amplify our own voices. And how can we enable others to amplify their voices, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I appreciate you asking the question, because for years and years and years, being on this edgy part of the journey, it's been like sending information into the black hole, and you're thinking, and then all of a sudden somebody will come out of somewhere and say something, and they just go, oh, okay, somebody is reading it. But it's just like there's no feedback for years, and you just really, I mean, you just keep entertaining yourself by writing more material,
Right. Yeah.
but or doing another podcast or whatever. But then all of a sudden there'll be something coming back on Twitter. You go, okay, somebody's paying attention,
Right.
and you're not hearing about it, but it's something you just kind of have to hope that that's what's going on out there. But
Right.
yeah, it's really
Right.
funny.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's just very profound. Thanks for sharing, Dawna. So, another aspect of, diversity that I wanted to bring up, and because we are on Lean and Agile platform, which is geared towards women, I'm talking about gender diversity specifically, fully aware that there are more diversities. So, in your experience, Jonah, you've been into business, you've been into mentoring, speaking, writing. Uh, was there an element of you being a woman, and did it span out any differently to you? Did it inhibit your growth, or what was it like to be a woman in this space?
Well, I mean, I don't have to tell anybody that being a woman in any of these spaces typically means unless you're in HR or something like that. But I mean, I was with forestry, and I was two women on a 30-person management
I'm
team.
sure. Yeah.
So, and it's the kind of thing where they look at you and say, can you bring the cookies and coffee? So it's just, I mean, that's evolved
Yeah.
a bit, thankfully.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, hallelujah. But
Yeah.
still, there's still a mentality and it's super subtle, like
Yeah.
very interesting. But, to personally, um, how can I say this? I'm aware of where biases are running. I just don't give them any energy. So I do
Love
my
that.
best. I
Love
mean, there's
that.
always that question of did this happen because I'm a woman? And if it did, okay, fine, I'll take that in. But I'm not going to give it any energy at all. I'm not going to feed that wolf, so to speak.
Love
And
that.
by the way, I love wolves, so this isn't about that. And their family, but it's just to say that you've got to be very careful about what you give attention to, because what you give attention to is what expands and grows. And so, I think the key on the diversity part of it right now, if we look at it from a decision making point of view, and this is how I'm framing it going forward, is that we've been resolving conflict for eons.
Yes.
And what that means is we wipe out the opportunity for diverse voices to come in. We assume that if we get rid of the conflict, avoid it, don't explore it, just kind of make everybody feel good and there's some harmony there, that we won't actually have any conflict. But of course, the reality is, in a complex zone, you need everybody's voice coming in.
Yes.
And you need to understand relationships, which women, frankly, are really good at. And so,
Yeah.
this is where it's just a natural thing. So this is where diversity of gender creates a better and stronger capacity to work with complexity, because there are those voices that can see the interconnections and the interrelationships between things and bring those forward. And that's pretty key. So I think that we're going to have to see a shift
Yeah.
and Agile is a great space for that, but we have to see a shift toward being able to work with diverse perspectives so that we can see the picture in a better and more clear way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love what you said about, the bias, or, even the unsaid, untold, unconscious bias. Don't feed it, right? Don't give it energy, because it's bound to exist. I don't think we can completely eliminate it. Nobody can. No
No.
organization can. I think it will exist. But the way we can kind of overcome or become stronger than that is don't give energy. I love that message.
The other aspect of it too that I'm starting to appreciate even further is that, I mean, first of all, we know from the science and the neuroscience is that being aware of bias doesn't make it go away. So what do you do? So you design for it, and it's that understanding that, okay, we've got a bias going on here. It's a gender bias or whatever, but let's work with gender for the moment. Then you design for decisions that mitigate that subconscious bias. And in doing so, then you can elevate the quality of your decisions exponentially, because you're intentionally designing them to get rid of inequities that exists only because nobody, if they're aware of them, that's super, but you still don't have the mechanism in place to offset that. So there are certain conditions that that make it easier to work with, work with bias there that anybody has access to, companies have access to. And I think it's more intentionally designing the decision-making process so that you're working with those biases and mitigating them. And I mean, we looked at crowdsourcing decision-making as well, distributed decision-making through crowdsourcing. And I'm not sure how much research is out there on that, but I do know that the more you kind of smush these perspectives together into a decision, the better chance it's going to come out less biased. But I mean, that's an issue across the board. AI's got that, in any software development programs, there's a whole lot of stuff that's got bias embedded in it. And but it's going to be a design issue in the end.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that, designing your strategy around that, because just being aware, doesn't let it go.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love this. Thank you so much, Dawna.
Thank you.
And I know I can go on for hours with you, because so many thoughts and questions are coming up. But I know this interview is time bound, and we might have to schedule more and more interviews with you outside of this platform as well. But this is fantastic. So as we wrap up, Jonah, I usually love to wrap up interviews with, do you have a message or anything that you swear by, and something that you hold on to, right? It could be just a phrase or a word or a sentence, but what is it that keeps you going?
Gosh, there's so many levels on that one. My gift is to being able to see things differently. So that helps a lot, but it's also doesn't fit necessarily in mainstream thinking. So, self-care is key. And there have been times when I've not been very good at it, but in today's world, whether it's yoga in the morning or whether it's a walk in the woods, and when I'm working with men who are extremely sensitive, they're looking after their families, they're putting themselves last. And in order to work with today, you have to put yourself first, but not in a narcissistic kind of way. I'm not referring to it like that. You actually have to be able to say, hey, I'm important enough that my health comes really high up on the scale. Like, I'm going to look after that. So whatever way you do that, the message is in this confusing, somewhat disconcerting environment we're in at the moment globally, being able to take the time for your we talked about earlier, your creativity, your physical fitness is key for this, and just being able to be at peace at some points, even if it's going down to my habit is to get down 5 blocks and count waves or something like that. Just sort of shut the brain off and let the senses recover.
Wow. I love that, because not many people have spoken about self-care, and you bring up a very good point, especially as women with families and work-life balance. We even unconsciously put ourselves the last, because we want to serve everyone and everything and everybody before we even come to ourselves, and it's too late sometimes. Yeah. So it's a great reminder. Thank you so much, Jonah. And we hope to see you back here. And thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom and everything, with us. And this is again leanandagile.org, LIA100, bringing Dawna Jones. And it is such a huge honor. Thank you so much, Dawna.
Oh gosh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks.